everybody, it's Lori again, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I would like to revisit a video, a subject on a video that I shared a few months back. And that particular video I actually recorded a couple of years ago, but we just recently released it. And what the subject matter was water glassing fresh raw eggs. And today I hopefully am going to be able to share some absolutely amazing results directly with you about water glassing eggs. 5 years ago, I started the water glassing journey, and it has seriously been one of the things that has literally changed our lives in our home, because we live in Minnesota where the winters are so harsh and extreme, and we personally refuse to force our chickens with artificial lighting to make them lay through the winter. In these short and very cold days here in Minnesota, the chickens just stop laying. It's just always been a part of life, and we feel that that is a natural part of their physiology, and they need to have that time off. If their body is telling them you shouldn't be laying eggs, we're not going to force our chickens into laying eggs. And so this method of water glassing eggs has just been amazing for us, because I can store fresh raw eggs all the way through the winter and use them and never have to buy store-bought eggs. We just have our own chicken eggs all the way throughout the year. But this is the exciting thing. In all of the information that I have seen, in all of the videos that I have watched in these last 5 years about water glassing, everybody has pretty much said that it's a form of storage. And this, when I made my video, this at that point in time was the information that I had, that you could store these eggs up to 2 years. And so for the last, for the first 3 years that I was water glassing eggs, that's what I did. I figured, if I have water glassed eggs that are reaching that 2-year mark, I better get busy and start using them up. And so generally, I have been using my water glassed eggs at the 2-year storage mark. And I've tried really hard to make sure that I use them up by that 2-year mark. But of all things, I had a small container that I happened to overlook on my shelves. And it was water glassed back in August of 2019. So we are literally, you guys, we're way past 3 years. We're almost to 4 years of these eggs, raw eggs, being water glassed on my shelf. 4 years, very close. And so today, I would like to kind of walk you through, along with me, as I see if these eggs are actually still viable and usable. Now at the 3-year mark, I checked them. I rinsed a couple of them off. I cracked them open. I smelled them. They did not have any odor at all. And I cooked them up just to see if maybe the lime had soaked through the eggshell, and perhaps after all that long time of being in the lime brine, if maybe that lime taste had finally gotten through the shell of the egg. So I went through all the steps. I cooked it up, and they were amazing at 3 years. So now here I am, almost to the 4-year mark. And I want you to come along with me as I open, test, and use these eggs today. So I'm going to get set up here at the sink, and I will be right back. So I am set up. Hopefully I've got the camera aimed so that you can just see everything that's going on here. And please pay note of this old jar back from August of 2019. These are our farm fresh water glassed eggs from 2019. And so I'm going to crack them open one at a time. And what I do is, first of all, if your eggs are usually bad in water glassing, they will float in the lime and water brine already in the container. You'll see them pop up to the surface. If there is a bad egg in there, it will float. But I just double check in clear water and do a float test. And also, it's really, really important to rinse off this lime brine from the outside of your egg before you crack it open, because that lime tastes horrible. And if you drip any of that lime brine from the outside of your egg into whatever you're cooking or baking or whatever, it's going to flavor it with that lime brine, and it's nasty, nasty tasting stuff. So you don't want to do that. But what I always do when I am cracking open my water glassed eggs is that I always have a very small bowl, and I crack each egg just individually. I look at it and I smell it before I add it into my recipe. Your smell is the most important. What are you doing? She sees things moving. Hey, it's just me. She sees things moving on the video screen. So, and she's barking at it. Our little Sadie, she's just so funny. Anyway, so back to what I was saying is that I take a small bowl and I crack each egg just individually before I place it into whatever dish or recipe that I'm using it in. Now today I am going to we're going to test these eggs together, but hopefully I will be using these eggs from 2019 in a baked custard. So I'm just going to get started and we will see together what these look like. Now, before I crack anything open, there's a few things that I want to say. Number one, when I open this jar, I'm going to smell the brine, okay? Just smell the whole jar. If there seems to be any odor in there, I'm going to know that something somewhere probably isn't so good. I don't know necessarily if there is going to be a problem. I don't know where I will find the problem. But if there is an odor to that brine at all, a rotten egg smell, then I know somewhere something is wrong. But the next thing that I will absolutely tell you that I know is going to happen, because I've used a lot of 2-year-old eggs. I tested this particular container at 3 years. The longer you have stored water glassed fresh eggs, the runnier the insides get. They become watery, they can become very runny. The yolk no longer stays in a nice little circle. It just kind of is just kind of watery, combined white and yolk, just very runny egg, okay? Now that does not mean by any means that it is bad or rotten. It is just how water glassed eggs age, okay? So having a runny egg, a watery egg, having your yolk being busted open and runny, that is totally, totally normal for water glassed eggs. So I'm just going to crack this thing open if I'm strong enough to do so. Well, it looks good in there, guys. Let me give it a sniff. Okay, I do smell just a little off smell, okay? It's not bad. It's not like a terrible, terrible rotten egg smell, but I am smelling just a little off smell. Now, remember that this is 4 years storage of a raw egg, all right? I'm going to rinse the lime off of this egg. And then I'm going to do an individual float test. And what I do is I just fill a container with water. Now, since that egg is not floating, it should be good. So I'll take it out of the float test, and then we're going to go ahead and crack it open. How should I do this so that you guys can see? This would work really well. Yep, I think you can see it there. Now, like I said, this egg is going to be very, very runny and watery. Very, very tough shell yet. There we go. Hopefully you can see. I'm going to open my garbage container and get that shell in there. Hopefully you can see that that is very watery and runny. I'm going to give it a sniff. You guys, there's no odor, no bad odor to that at all. There's just no smell at all. That is a good egg. So we're gonna go on. Okay, now I'm seeing a couple of eggs in there that because of their age, the shells are starting to crack and open, but I think this one is intact. Let's rinse this one. Give it a little float test on its own. Looks good. And we're going to crack that one open. Very watery as expected. Give it the sniff test. No odor at all. Another good egg. And like I said, these are way over 3 years old. These are really, they're only like what, 4 or 5 months from being 4-year-old eggs. And here's where I'm going to run into some troubles because I can see an egg is cracked. I'll try to remove this as carefully as I can. But you can see there, shade the light. Do you see how that egg is beginning? I can't figure out which way to go. There. Do you see how that egg has, with age, the shell has gotten a little bit weak and it has started to crack. So I am not going to use that egg. We know that it's been exposed to the lime brine. And here is another one that has cracked open. So we're not going to use this one. And this is probably where the beginning of the odor or the smell is starting to come from, is those cracked eggs. Let's see this next test subject. And I'm not finding any cracks or damage on this egg, so we're going to rinse it. Do our little extra float test. Looks good. Give it the sniff test. No odor on that one either. So now we have 3 good ones. Hopefully I can get my hand in here to reach more. No damage on that one. No float. No odor. Five. 6. 7. 8. I need 9 for my recipe today, so that's why I'm counting these out so I don't get lost while I'm talking to you and testing. Okay, now I can see that this one is a little cracked open, so we're not even going to bother testing that one. We need 1 more good egg out of this container. And there's our number 9. and no odor. You guys, this is absolutely fantastic. I am thrilled. 3.5, almost 4-year-old raw egg storage, guys, and I have viable eggs. This is exciting and amazing. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe my hands off here and I'm gonna tip you up. Okay, so I have placed, now I make I kind of do a variation of a baked egg custard. I kind of came up with a recipe that fits into a 9x13 pan because a single custard recipe was not enough for our family, and a double kind of overfilled the pan. And so I've kind of come up with my own adapted recipe for baked custard. I have my 9x13 pan, which I have just greased, okay? And what I do is I do 9 eggs, 9 raw eggs, and 6 cups of scalded and cooled milk. Well, instead of scalded and cooled, I'm going to be using my canned milk. So I have 4 cups here, 2 cups in a pint. So we're going to put in our 6 cups of home canned milk. Shake that up a little bit. Pop that bad boy open. Give that a sniff. I don't know about you, but every time I open my canned goods, I always smell. Always look, always smell. Smells great, looks great. We're gonna get that in there. Same thing for this pint. Shake that up a little bit. Oh, that one was sealed really good too. Looks good, smells good, and in it goes. All right, and then 9 eggs, 6 cups of scalded or canned milk. Do a little pinch of salt. 1 cup of sugar. And 3 to 4 teaspoons. I really like a lot of vanilla in this. I love the flavor of vanilla. So 3 to 4 teaspoons of vanilla. See how official that was, how I just dumped it in? I can't help it, guys. I'm a dump cook. I've got another new vanilla here that I've got to get open so that I can add some more vanilla. You know, sometimes they make these containers adult-proof, don't they? Okay, so I'd say that I had maybe 2 teaspoons, maybe nearing 3. We'll say that's 3 and 4. Sounds good to me. And then I put just a little sprinkle of cinnamon into the actual custard mix itself. Now, when I bring this over by the oven, I'm also going to just sprinkle nutmeg on top, but the cinnamon I kind of like to mix it in a little bit. It will come back up and float on the top, but I try to incorporate it a little bit into the custard. So that is it for our ingredients. We're just going to whisk this up. Oh, that smells so good. All right, we're going to call that good. Now I'm going to stop the process and I'm going to move my pan and my mixture over by the oven so that you guys can see how I get it into the oven without really slopping it around in the pan. So I'm going to stop the camera and move over to the other side of the kitchen, and we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm set up over here by the stove and the oven again, and so now I will just show you just one of those little extra tips. You know, when you're working with something really, really fluidy, like if, you know, when you make a pumpkin pie, you know how fluidy that pumpkin pie is before it's baked. And if you try to carry that across your kitchen, you're going to get drips and, you know, it's going to run out, you know, out of your pie plate, all those good things. You know what it's like carrying liquids in a container or a pan. So what I do is I just elect to come over here by my stove And now my oven is preheated to 350 degrees, okay? And all we're gonna do is we're gonna bake this for 45 minutes. So what I do is I just pull out my oven rack, set my pan on the oven rack, and then pour in my custard. And it really fills up that pan nicely. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of nutmeg, ground nutmeg, and I'm just going to sprinkle the top with that ground nutmeg. So we have cinnamon, nutmeg, and vanilla in this recipe. And then carefully, hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing, carefully push your oven rack back in with your pan full of fluid on top, and we are going to bake that for 45 minutes for this 9 by 13. So 45 minutes, or until, just kind of like with your pumpkin pies, 45 minutes or until a knife inserted into the center of the pan comes out clean and none of the filling is sticking to it. So I'm just going to let it bake, and I'll come back and show you the results. We will do a taste test so that you can see that these eggs that are what, I was sitting here and I was doing the math, August of 2019. So we are literally at 3 years and 8 months on these raw eggs. 3 years and 8 months, guys. Just incredible. But I'm going to do a live on cam taste test just so that you know I'm not afraid to eat these things. Even though some of you may have looked at those runny eggs and just thought, ugh, no, they're not rotten. That is just really seriously just the aging process on these water glass eggs. So we'll be back in a little bit. I'll show you the results and take a taste. Okay, so my custard has been baked and cooled. I do prefer to eat my custard chilled, all right? Just another little thing to let you know. But I'm going to dig into this, and like I said, I am not afraid to eat these eggs at all. But what the result is after 3.5 years, I'm not sure. I'm wondering, has the lime leached through, in all those months of sitting in that lime water, has the lime leached through the eggshells and into the eggs? And is it going to taste like lime, or will it taste absolutely perfect? I don't know, but we will find out. Now, like I said, I regularly use water glass eggs at the age of 2 years, okay? So I always know that there's never any problems at 2 years. Let's see if I can get up just a little bit here. There we go. Oh, you can see Sadie in the background there looking out the window. Anyway, I regularly use eggs that are 2 years old in the water glassing method. And so I've never come across an egg at 2 years storage that has any sort of that lime taste inside of the egg. But I'm really curious to see if these over 3-year-old water glass eggs, if they have any odd taste. So I'm going to test it on cam and we will see. Hopefully you can see it here. This is the custard. All right. I'm going to take just a small bite, just because, to be honest, guys, I don't know. We'll see. Absolutely, absolutely no lime taste at all. Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, you guys, this is just so exciting. This is totally exciting. So good and so exciting. So as I was saying, while I was waiting for my custard to bake, I really did the math and I really started thinking about this. So at this point in time, we only have 1 week left in March, technically 8 days left in March of 2023. But let's just say 1 week. I mean, 1 week isn't going to make that much difference in storage at all. So my storage time on these water glass eggs was 3 years and 8 months. That is absolutely incredible. Now, as I went through, we did find some cracked eggs. Okay? And so then I started thinking about the percentage of eggs inside of that water glass jar that actually were usable and viable compared to the ones that had cracked. And I'm actually after all these years of storage, I'm at 95% of viable eggs inside that jar. Now, was it perfect? No, it wasn't perfect. I showed you there was some that cracked and they started kind of leaking out into the lime water. And that is also why the lime brine started to smell a bit. So, you know, are you going to have complete success all the time? No, but 95% success inside of that one jar. Think about the possibilities of that in large storage amounts. I mean, really. Some things that I did want to go back and I wanted to kind of touch base on. First of all, we will put the link to my instructional tutorial video on how to water glass eggs. Oh, well, that's weird. That kind of fell down into the pan. Anyway, we will put the link to that instructional video that I made down in the description underneath the video here. So if you have never water glassed eggs before and you would like to try it, the link for that instructional video will be down in the description. There's a couple things that I would like to update on my own assessment and experience in water glassing eggs. One of the things is that I have really found that I prefer to use smaller containers. Now, I used to water glass eggs in 5-gallon buckets, and you could put a lot of eggs in a 5-gallon bucket. But what happened is that the eggs became so heavy that the weight of all the eggs started crushing the lower layers of the eggs. And then I was left having to salvage the good eggs out of there before everything became this stinky, smelly mess. And so I really found out that storing your water glass eggs in smaller amounts is better. Now, I know a lot of people are using glass containers, and obviously, as you saw, I have and do still occasionally use glass containers. But what I have found is I really, really prefer a hard plastic container. Now, the reason why I prefer that is simply because the lime ends up etching your glass after a while. It leaves this white film on the inside of your jar that no matter what you do, you can't get it off. I have tried scrubbing, I have tried chemicals, it just etches the glass. And so that renders that beautiful glass jar, it renders it pretty much kind of useless for other things, just simply because it's really ugly. All right. So if you intend to, let's say you intend to use the 1/2-gallon jars that they sell these days, you know, you're going to go out, you're going to buy yourself some 1/2-gallon jars, which is fine. Those work wonderful. All right. Those work wonderful for water glassing. But if you have the intention of any time in the future, maybe reusing that same glass jar after you've water glassed in it, that jar is not going to look nice. I can guarantee you it will not look nice. So I prefer plastic for water glassing eggs, but it does need to be a really heavy and firm type plastic container. Anything that's flexible on the sides, you will have breakage, because if you pick that container up, you can accidentally squish the sides in and bump your eggs into each other and they will crack. So hard plastic containers, and I do prefer ones that have screw-on lids. One of the other things that I do want to share with you, now I talked about how the eggs in the bottom of the 5-gallon pails, the top eggs kind of crush the bottom ones, and then you're left salvaging dozens and dozens of eggs. I have tried re-water glassing eggs and I did not have success at it, okay? So I removed my eggs from the brine and made a new brine, a fresh brine solution, and put them back in. And what I found is that the lime flavor did actually go through the shell of the eggs in those eggs. And I firmly believe that this is because as you reach in there I use my hands and I've also used a spoon. When you disturb those eggs, you are disturbing that wet bloom, okay? All of your eggs inside of your container, in your water glassing container, are wet. And when you go and you touch them, the bloom is wet, and you touch it with a spoon or with tongs or with your fingers, and you're disturbing that bloom. So, there are some people that say that you can re-water glass eggs if you run into a situation where the brine stinks, like you have some broken eggs and it's starting to stink bad. There are some people that do claim that you can re-water glass. I personally have never had success doing that. So when I had problems with my large buckets of eggs, where I was having to salvage eggs out of that brine that was beginning to stink, what I end up doing is rinsing them and putting them into the refrigerator and then trying to use all of those eggs up within the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. So that's another reason why I really like to use smaller batches now, 1, 2, 3 dozen at max in my containers, just simply because if you do, for whatever reason, let's say you accidentally jostled the container too much and eggs clacked together and something broke, or over time, sometimes those shells will get weak and they'll just bust, and there's nothing you can do about that. But anytime you run into problems, then if you discover that smelly brine, you can salvage what eggs are not broken in there, and 99% of the time they will be viable, usable eggs, even though that brine smelled bad of rotting eggs. The other eggs that did not break, 99% of the time they are viable and usable eggs. They do not take on that smell. They do not take on the flavor of that kind of nasty, smelly brine, okay? So don't think just because you find a broken egg in your brine that the rest of the eggs are just trash. They're not. But I just found in smaller portions of eggs, it's a lot easier if you do run into a problem with a cracked egg inside of there. You're not stuck with so many eggs that you have to use so quickly. So plastic containers, smaller containers. And then the other thing that I do want to mention is the cooler the area that you can store these in, the better. Whether it be a cool corner in your kitchen or a cool cabinet, or maybe a back bedroom closet that doesn't get quite as warm as the rest of the house. If you have a basement, a cool basement, store them there. Try not to move your containers around very much. Be gentle when you move your containers around. You're working with water. Eggs are in water, and when that water sloshes, the eggs roll and slosh. And so to prevent breakage, try to be very careful when you're moving them, very gentle when you're moving them, and try not to move them a whole lot. Let's see if there was anything else. Oh, I wanted to remind you, as you saw when I was cracking my eggs open over at the sink, I wanted to remind you again that that whole aging process with water glass eggs, it is completely normal for those eggs to get runny looking. You saw that in the video. I'm eating them right here in front of you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. They are not rotten. That is a totally normal part of aging. Another thing that I have experienced in some of my containers, and I've noticed particularly in containers that have had kind of too cold of temps. I had a bucket of water glass eggs kind of near my back door. And as I said, here in Minnesota, we have harsh, cold winters. And I believe those eggs got too cold. And that bucket wasn't sealed really tight. It was a 5-gallon bucket. And when I went to use those eggs a few months later, there was this crystallized, almost like glass on top of the surface of my water glassing, lime glassing liquid. And it was like crystallized, like almost like sand. You had to bust through it. I had to bust through it with a spoon. Now, all of the eggs below that crystallized layer that occurred, they were absolutely fine. There was nothing wrong with them. But that is something that can happen in the right conditions, is that you can literally get this hard surface on the top of your fluid that you have to break through. That's completely normal too. So if you ever run into that, don't worry about that. That's good. Another thing that I will mention is that in your water glassing container, you will notice after you mix your lime water solution up and get your eggs in there, that lime tends to resettle back out of the water, and it settles in a layer. It settles on your eggs, and it settles down at the bottom of your container. Now, when you go to clean that container out, you can reach your hand down in there and you can feel it for yourself. All of that settled pickling lime at the bottom of that jar is really thick and tough stuff. It's almost like cement. It does clean out very easily, but where I'm going with this thought is the way that that lime settles out of the water in your container. I really feel like if you dump that used brine down your sink drains, that lime can actually settle in the elbows of your drain pipes and clog your drain pipes. And the problem with this is it's not like a hair clog or something like that. You can put a drain snake down there and try to work at it, but with that pickling lime, it's not just gonna unplug and swoosh through. It's just gonna kind of stay there, kind of like cement inside of the elbows of your drains. So I always dispose of my used lime brine outside. I just dump it outside. So that might be a really good tip for some of you. Oh, make sure, I'm sorry guys, I made notes. Make sure that in your water glassing container, make sure that all of your eggs are below the surface of the lime brine. You never want an egg sticking up above that water line, okay? It has to be down below the line. I also very regularly, I know some people say that you have to have absolutely fresh eggs to be able to do this water lime glassing. But I disagree. I've been doing this now for well over 5 years, and I very regularly will allow my eggs to come in from the coop. I put them on my counter until I have collected enough that I want to water glass a full container of eggs. So they will sit there for 2, sometimes 3 weeks, but I suggest that, up to 2 weeks is very safe to collect your eggs little by little until you have enough to water glass. So no, the eggs do not have to be laid the same day and water glassed. They can sit and wait for you on the counter. Do not stick them in the refrigerator, however, okay? Because if you refrigerate your unwashed eggs, when you take them out to water glass them out of the refrigerator, condensation is going to happen on the outside of that egg. And then when you go to pick that egg up, you're going to compromise the natural invisible bloom on the outside of the egg. So do not refrigerate your eggs if you intend to water glass them. Just leave them at room temperature unwashed on your counter for up to 2 weeks until you're ready to do your water glassing project. So I think I have covered all of the little extra tips and hints and thoughts and insight that I could come up with for the last few years that I've been doing this. It is an extremely amazing method of storing eggs. I really truly hope that you will give it a chance in your home. I know that some people have said that they have tried water glassing store-bought eggs. Here in the United States, store-purchased eggs have all been washed, so the bloom has been washed off. I don't know what to say about that. I know that everything that I have read and researched has specifically stated clean but unwashed eggs because it was so important to keep that invisible layer, the bloom, intact. So I know sometimes in other canning groups and things like that, you may see people saying that they've had success with store-bought eggs. I personally cannot suggest that just simply because my experience comes from unwashed farm fresh eggs, and that is where I have had my success, is with the old way of doing it. I researched it, and that's how I did mine, and that is where my success lays, is in farm fresh unwashed eggs. So the whole store purchased water glassing thing, you're just going to have to explore that one on your own because I have no insight, but I would suggest unwashed eggs if I had any good advice to give at all. But anyway, I'm going to just sit here and enjoy the rest of my egg custard. I hope you found this informative. Remember to look below in the description for that water glassing egg tutorial video if you're interested in learning how to do that. Thank you so much for spending your time with me again today. God bless you all, and happy canning, everybody.